Well, let's talk about financial literacy, starting with what what is it?
Financial literacy, well, we're in financial literacy month, right? So financial literacy is just a time where we focus on our finances. It's really important to know financial matters. Do you remember when we were in like high school and it was like you were learning pi and it was like, when am I ever going to use pi? Well, I still don't know when you're going to use pi, but there is math in everyday money choices that we're making, whether it be that Starbucks swipe or coffee at home. And then, of course, financial matters. People are always having to finance their big dreams, like for homes or autos. They're also learning to use things like debit card or Venmo in our electronic world. So financial matters are really important, and we use it day to day more than you would think.
Absolutely. How do you start teaching kids about financial literacy, about those money issues?
For our community, it's tough, right? Because we all have, we're raised in different ways and we all have different means. But when I think kind of back to the root of it, I think that as parents, we all want our kids to be able to, have things a little better than us, to struggle a little less than us. So the sooner you start teaching your kid to save, the better. When I heard the pay yourself first mentality, I was already in college. I had credit card debt. So, yeah, it was a great concept, but I couldn't pay myself first. I felt like I had to pay my bills first. So it wasn't until like I got my first raise, and back in 2000 it was like a whopping 50 cents a an hour, right? But that meant I could save $20 a week and not mess with the budget that I had already made for myself, paying my credit cards and things like that. And wouldn't you know, like by the end of 6 months, even though it didn't sound like much, I had $500 saved. And instead of me putting a set of tires on a credit card, I was able to use my savings account to make that happen. So it's really important that we look at those financial matters and kind of start making those improvements when we can.
Let's talk about pay yourself first, because
Okay.
that's definitely a philosophy that I hadn't heard until later in life also. What does that mean? How do you pay yourself first?
Okay, so let's take that instance when I was talking about, let's say I made $12 an hour and I got a raise to 12.50. What I did was there was going to be a difference in my paycheck, right? So instead of letting that all hit my checking account, that 50 cents I got paid biweekly. So I put $40 away in a savings account. That way I never saw it because it was the $20 a week times two. And then I lived off of what this was. So I paid myself first into a separate account. Sometimes it's good to put it in a different location than where your primary checking account is, because it's really easy to make that transfer online. So I did it into a separate credit union where my daily finances were, but I paid myself first. And that way that money was growing and already set aside for whatever budget I had left.
Gotcha. Let's go back to how do kids learn about financial literacy? How can you start them down this path?
So starting is pretty easy, in my opinion. When your kids are small and they're excited to go to the grocery store and they walk around and can pick an item, it's probably time to start having little conversations about making financial choices, right? So of course, we're not talking about retirement with our kids, but we do have a family budget, and everybody in the family can support that budget when we're making those financial choices. So, maybe you have a kid that goes to the grocery store and wants a toy, but it's important for them to understand, like, this isn't a week for toys. This is a week for us to get, the snacks or the fruit that we need for the next couple of weeks. And so that way they understand that everything costs, and sometimes it's better to get our priorities than what we may want. Another way, when they get a little bit older, we actually have an event here in Houston called Lemonade Day. This is a great time to help your kids understand income and expenses, right? So the old classic lemonade stand is kind of modernized into the ability to teach our kids lessons about finances. So they'll go through this cool little workbook where they get to design a marketing plan and the kind of lemonade they want to serve and what it looks like and even the cost. And you walk with them through those planning stages as well as the event of operating the Lemonade Day stand so that in the end, they know what they made. They know if they had to pay back a loan, maybe that you let them borrow, and then they understand profit. So that's a really cool event. It goes on every year here in Houston. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can visit a Members Choice Credit Union branch here in Katy, or you can go to lemonadeday.org/Katy. So I have teenagers, and teenagers is a good time to really start teaching those lessons that are going to follow them through their first job as they move to college. And my 3 kids are all different. Like, I think they purposely, one saw this one and was like, I want to be the opposite of that. And then the next one came and was like, I'm going to be the opposite of that. So like the 3 bears, too big, too little, kind of in the middle. I have a big spender, one that won't let go of, 50 cents to borrow to her sister, and then one kind of that teeter-totters in the middle, depending on what they want. When elementary kids, they learn save, spend, share in Lemonade Day. And when I got older, my kids got older, I taught them every day, in between, and big dream. So in my family, we won't purchase them their first car. They can buy one when they get around to it, or have a down payment when they can afford one. Until then, they can borrow our car, right? So for our kids, they have these 3 buckets, and they have the autonomy to put things in those 3 buckets. And so I have one kid who's almost there. And then I have another kid, that bucket's kind of a little bit empty, but that's because in between they want a PS5. So just making sure that, you think about your kids, you think about, what's right for your family. In my house, I didn't grow up with much. So we didn't get paid for chores, and we didn't get a weekly allowance. So there's still ways to teach your kids about money, even if you don't have that weekly allowance coming in. It's just making sure you're very intentional about speaking about finances and making those choices as a family. Everybody wants Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi is a monthly bill, so we have to talk about that.
That totally makes sense. My teenagers are learning. I got them credit cards because they're 16 and 17, and they're on my account. And the other day I checked the balance, and it was way higher than it should have been because the 17-year-old decided to go to the mall. And so then we had to have a talk about budgeting. Like, you went and spent $112. Maybe we look at like 50 a month, but it just, what you were just saying reminded me of those conversations, because I was like,
yeah. Again, they're totally different, right? Kids just decide to be who they want to be.
Oh yeah, and she's normally the saver, but it was my money. So all of a sudden she was the spender. Yeah.
I do want to say that is a great financial choice, though. You are really setting them up for success in the future. And we talked about parents really wanting that for their kids, right? Let me let you struggle a little less. So I'm sure maybe you built your credit by yourself from the ground up, and now you're in a position where you're able to, and anybody can do that, maybe get a loan for them or co-sign a loan for them. I did it for my daughter. Like I said, we had a family car that she could borrow her senior year. But when it needed repairs, she needed $1,500. So we went ahead and we opened a credit card, but I added her as an authorized user. So we put that on a credit card that I got the statement. I could tell if she made the payment. I would actually collect the payment from her, but that credit card started building her credit before she turned 18. So I'm sure that's what you're doing, right?
that it was to kill two birds with one stone. One is that I wasn't always there when they needed something. Nobody has cash anymore, so it was an easy way for them to take care of their needs if there was something immediate. And then yeah, just the idea that it would help get them set once they're 18 and out there, and hopefully teach them some responsible spending habits. We're working on that one.
We are working on that.